Well, I was born in Nuremberg, Germany, West Germany, at the time, because my mother had gone to Germany after the war because she wanted to be an opera singer. And so I went there, and then my father at some point came there, and then I was born in 1954 and lived in Germany for a year and a half, and then I came to the United States, back to the house where my father was born, and then I was raised there in New Jersey, and my father was an architect and painter and sculptor, Tony Smith, and and I had two younger sisters, Seaton, who is an artist, and my sister Beatrice, who's dead. I don't know, I was sort of a peculiar child, I suppose, but I had a lot of fun. I grew up in a neighborhood with lots of girls, so we were like, I think we had about 48 girls in about 5 or 6 or 7 houses, so we all ran around like crazy. And I grew up in the suburbs in the late 50s and early 60s, and I had a tremendous amount of freedom to go riding a bicycle around and disappear. And we helped our father a great deal on his work, and we did really, that was a very dominant part of my childhood, is that we helped my father do things. We lived in 2 houses, so we would get up in the morning, go to school, and then come home, and then my mother would bring us to our father's house. We'd have dinner, and then we'd come home again. And so we lived, we had this very, which I have recreated in my own life, living in 2 houses sort of fluidly. And we were sort of peculiar, but and I was probably melancholic a great deal of the time, but I had a lot of fun on my own, and I had fun with friends.
How come you were melancholic? How did you experience that?
Just by my nature. I think just by my nature. But no, I remember being unbearably bored a lot when I was a kid, that there wasn't enough stimulation. I didn't read. I couldn't really read as a child, and I liked looking at things, which drives other people insane that live around me. But because I'm always going, oh, look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that, and that can drive. I try to curb that now. My father was good friends with Jackson Pollock, but he died by the time I was 2. When I was 2, he died. But he was very good friends with Barnett Newman and Paul Feely and different people, and Barnett Newman and his wife were sort of like grandparents to us. They weren't, I don't think they were much older than my parents, but they brought us presents. So that was something like, it was like having a grandparent or something. But, and I was very attached to them. But, and lots of my father's students came to see him, and sometimes would live with us, and working with him, or lots of people came, because we lived outside of New York. It's really only about 12 miles away, but it's it would take people about an hour to get there. So it was a trek for people to come, but it was wonderful to be around artists and to listen to them talking and stuff. But I was young, and I was like a child. And I'm still like a child, but then I was more like a child, but I enjoyed very much listening to what people said. Although I have no memories of what they said. I just liked hearing them talk. My father's friends were primarily abstract painters. So for me, I didn't see, or I saw very little representational art practically till I went to college. I grew up with abstract paintings, and probably in a way it's what I'm the most attracted to still. I think going to college or going to, like I saw Van Gogh's Starry Night, I remember at the museum as a child, and that's something that, that was, that's still something that's very compelling as an image to me. Or, seeing certain paintings in the museums, were very interesting. And so for me, in a certain way, it made me attracted to representation because it was unfamiliar. But my father's work, I feel a great affinity to. I feel it, like something that's in your courses in your blood. That it's not separate from you. The way that one's parents' genetics aren't separated from you. While our work and everything is very different, and he was very different than me, there's something very familiar about it. And my mother was a very spiritual person in some, non-defined way or something like that. And she was very, she had converted from maybe Episcopalian or something to Catholicism because of my father, because they got married and had me. But at that time people did that. But then she sort of went more towards Hinduism, or was Catholic and Hindu and Buddhist. So I think I was a little bit, but that was more towards when we were growing up. I was already probably about 16, 17. I mean, she took me to yoga classes and stuff when I was about 13 and stuff. But so she was someone who was, and she is also someone always very attracted to rocks and crystalline forms the way my father was, but had them, in her presence. And those also to me are something, I wouldn't say they're talking to you, but they're definitely engaging with you, or making a vibration with you or something like that, or plants and things, like the natural world. But they were also, my father also was, I would say a spirit, whatever that means to say someone's a spiritual person, but he was definitely attuned to something else. Both my parents taught us to trust our intuition and to follow it, and that's the strongest, knowledge that you have. And I thought in a way, I had the idea that your intuition is sort of knowledge and experience that you've incorporated in, that then you have access to use and make decisions within your life. That it's not just some things are being beamed into you, but most of it's sort of that you're standing on, you have a good base to stand on. And that then you can move very freely, like jazz musicians or something that can move very freely because they have some base that they're moving from. I was very influenced. I liked making things, but I was more interested in sort of craft things. But I wasn't, I always wanted to be a potter, but I didn't have any, to spin and things like that, on a wheel, forget it. I'm not centered enough for, I can construct things, but I couldn't do centering pots and stuff, I forget it. But I really liked making things, and then I was very influenced by Bread and Puppet Theater. I saw them, in the, late 60s or something, and they were very socially engaged and making a theater that was very essential and very moving to me and very symbolic. And they had wonderful things about moons and things like that. But so that was they were very moving to me. And then, and then at some point I said I'd go to college, and my sister Seaton drew still lifes. So she made photography, and she still does photography, but she also drew still lifes. And so then I didn't know what to do really, so I thought, okay, I'll just copy her and draw still lifes too. And I draw like packs of cigarettes or things like that to try to learn some relationship to how to think about perspective, or how to think about objects in space, and what's a way to think about objects in space. And then, so I did that for the first couple of years when I came to New York, and then I had a boyfriend, so I painted his guitars and his friends' guitars. And then he worked at a good bookstore, The Strand, and he gave me a copy of Gray's Anatomy. And then because of that, I just started making bodies, and then whatever happened. I mean, I think like as an artist, I'm trying to make something that reflects some feeling back to me that I'm trying to imbue something with. And it's very incredibly unspecific what it is you want from something, and it's unspecific what you get from it, but there's still like some arrangement in between those things where you kind of go like, okay, now I'm done. Now, like, I've put in my time, I've paid attention to this thing, and I'm happy. I mean, sometimes you can have some idea of an intent of like, not like that you want it to do something particular, but it does enough of something that you can find yourself in it. And to me, lots of things, sometimes I make things that are very hippy-dippy looking, and then sometimes I make things that are sort of cool, and then sometimes I make things that, seem like too overtly expressionistic or something. And now I'm in a little bit of phase of where there's a kind of little bit of a distance or something, but it's not in me that any of those things are any different. They all just resonate or hold meaning, or maybe just represent something I want to look at or think about, like having, in those senses, like having a talisman or something in front of you that reminds you of something to be attentive to. But it's also sometimes I just want something, and then I think, well, I can just make it. Making art or making things is a way to externalize or synthesize your experience or your consciousness or something into some physical, three-dimensional or two-dimensional, something that's physical, that has physical attributes and qualities to it, to kind of be able to look at it like a model or a temporary model of mostly like, is it like that, or does it feel like that, or is that an accurate assessment, or is that something that can hold you? And sometimes those things last for a couple of minutes or a couple of hours, or you can be satisfied looking at them later, but that it's constantly moving and changing. At the same time, like, I'm interested, in very sort of mundane, formal ways about processes, about what you can do with certain processes, what the histories of those processes are. I'm endlessly trying to teach myself about etching and all the different techniques you can like mush into one material and make something come out of it that, engages you for the like hundreds of hours, or 2 hours, or hundreds, more like hundreds of hours you're spending going cross-eyed, scratching something and getting, getting arthritis. And what comes out, that it holds you, or that it holds your attention, or gives you some sense of satisfaction or something for some moments. This is just like this. This is the second layer, and then I'm making the third layer, and then they come out completely different looking. I used to think about it like one version of a model of working over a period of time is like you're meandering around a garden. Like, you're not trying to get anywhere as an artist, you're just kind of circumnavigating the landscape. And, you know, in a wandering way that you might not arrive anywhere particular, or you might get lost along the way. Like, you know, anything can happen kind of. And then, you know, the other way was that from where I started, like once I started making body things, and then I made organs and things about the orifices and all these different things in the nervous system and different cells. And then I went out into figuration and, you know, sort of wandered around in that for a while. Then I kind of dropped that for a while and went more into just making natural images. And then I went back to figuration in relationship to nature. And, you know, now I'm maybe back in just natural images more because I live upstate and that's more what I see. But, you know, so in a way, like I can see that as like I can make a linear narrative out of it, and I also can see that how different times of my work, it very much correlated with my life, with my personal life somehow, of why I was doing certain things at a given moment. But I think, you know, and then at a certain point, you know, I always thought like the first part of my life was just like, I was just churning and I had so much energy and things to do, you know, that I just needed to make expression of or get out. You know, and then I think after a while, like your interior isn't as important to you as like paying attention to where you actually are, or what is in your environment, or what one should celebrate in your environment, like celebrate or go towards attraction to in your environment. Okay. When you're young, you have to kind of grapple with yourself and your, you know, till you find some peace within yourself. And, you know, it's just growing up. And at a certain point, you just don't care anymore. Like, you just get over all that. Or, you know, I mean, to a great deal of extent, you sort of get over a lot of it. It doesn't hold the same significance. I think I'll wait and work on another one. You know, because those parts I'll fill in, you know, matte. So we'll see. I can make an autobiography of my work, like when I look at it, like the different themes and stuff like that. But I have no interest to be a person in general. Like, I'm not interested in like my personhood, other than that, you know, you know, you have to function or something like that. But, you know, as an artist, like, I'm not interested in people knowing personal things about me, or that my work should express a kind of person or something like that. You know, like in, I don't mean it in a biographical way, or in an autobiographical way, or to be, you know, mostly I'm just a person who gets up in the morning and works, and sometimes goes to teach, and sometimes, you know, takes the train a lot, basically. And but it's not, I don't really have any need, but I also don't like it. Yeah, I'm very, I like being a private person. I think I came to New York when I was 22. You know, it's when the New York dolls were very popular, and you know, it was a very wonderful place to be because it was really a wreck. You know, there had been a kind of suburban exodus of the middle classes, and the infrastructure of the city was really falling apart. And, you know, so it made for a tremendous amount of freedom. And you didn't have to make very much money at all. You know, I lived in places where some places where I didn't pay rent for years because they were so in such bad condition, and other times I paid very low rent, so you didn't have to work very hard. I mean, you could have sort of odd jobs from here to there and stuff, and so it was very free. It was a lot of fun to be young in the city because, like in this neighborhood, if you look at pictures, there were no buildings for 4 blocks. It was just, not like a ghost town, but one that had been abandoned by the proper economic support that a city needs. But as a young person, it was really fun. It was very vital, I mean, it was still when the most of the galleries were in Soho, and you could go to Soho every Saturday or something, or go to art openings, and you'll be in the same room with artists that you admired, or it was very exciting to be. I mean, it's probably exciting anytime one's a young artist if you have a community, but it seemed a very, there were many, it was a time with many new parts of work entering, and many new forms of work entering. So it was interesting, and people, also like defining themselves as, artists and musicians and filmmakers, like some of those boundaries people could traverse. I've been always someone, just making things for the most part. Most of the people I knew at that time were much more experimental in a way, or much more out there than I was. I'm sitting home like drawing my little packs of cigarettes, trying to figure out like, how are you supposed to get around the pack of cigarettes to some other thing there, like how to move around in a drawing or something like that. But, and I was part of a group of artists called Collaborative Projects, but I was a very marginal part of that. It had been together for several years earlier, but we were like a gang, and make shows together and make situations together, and it had a lot of energy. At that time, I mean, the world still has problems with bodies or other people's bodies, in the general scheme of things, but that it was imperative to find some grounding or autonomy separate from, what different belief systems that we inherit, or governments that we inherit, or religions that we inherit, that these things that all are in a way vying for control, or industries that are inherently trying to vie for control of your autonomy. And you can't wash your brain out, you have all of these things, you personalize them and you're living them, and you become vitamins and things like this, and so it's like, at certain points you want to go like, like to slough off the dead, like get all these beliefs and all these things off of you, so you can kind of stand and kind of think a little bit about how you want to be in the world outside of what, different things are vying for control in the society. And I think that's also a part of growing up. You have to kind of grapple with all of these things that you have just inherited generationally, and then, like take what you need and leave the rest, kind of attitude. I think it's a good thing to do to people think about bodies, because all of our problems, for the most part, come out of our problematic thinking about bodies, about what it is to be in a body. And, it's a detrimental, for the most part, it has tremendously detrimental ramifications in this world, that are, very sorrowful. But, I mean, in like the European, or whatever it is, hierarchical dualism, where you have male and the mind separated from the body, I mean, that caused a lot of problems. But for everyone suffered because of those beliefs. But I think for me, I have a friend, Meme Bersenbrugge, who's a poet, and she writes a lot about nature and spends really a lot of time out in the wilderness. And knowing her really changed me, to see that, because I know at one point in the feminist movement, people didn't want to be in this reductive version of being woman and nature and the goddess, mother, this stuff. People said they didn't, that was a constraint. So then my friend Meme talks a lot about love and a lot about not the appropriateness, but that to align oneself with whatever one thinks of being as nature or something is a correct alignment, because you can see that we're stressing the earth in a very dramatic, unnecessary ways. And so it makes a lot more sense to say, oh no, I am nature also, that's in my interest. Nature and me, we have the same interest, in a way, although not to anthropomorphize nature, but we all have a better chance coexisting if we're not so harmful to it. So, and that's a slippery slope for artists, because you're using all these materials, and it's really, it's not that complicated. But it's very problematic, But, so then I sort of moved towards nature things, because I went to Harvard, to Peabody Museum to draw. That was in '94. And then this scientist there was telling me there's statistical modeling for the extinction and death of mammals, and how, what was the 30-year plan, the 50-year plan, and, how that has tremendously accelerated from 1994. And, then I thought, all the body stuff can take care of itself. Other people can take care of that. And it wasn't I'm going to go take care of nature, but I'm going to go pay attention. That's where I should put my focus. You stop looking in an interior way as much as you did when you're younger, and start, kind of looking out in the world and seeing what's interesting to you and what engages you, and then, in all different ways, your life changes. It becomes less personal in a way. First I just drew pictures of animals or different things, and then I thought fairy tales are this intersection between sort of the old world, the old stories of how we intersect and interact with animals or with trees or with different things. And so, I kind of moved around in that for several years, and then that stopped. And then it went out to some other, who knows where. Your work just, has its own trajectory, and it goes where it wants to go, and if you're smart, you just follow it where it wants to go. And, sometimes you like doing something a little too much, you're sort of slap happy, and then it's you're not sure whether the world needs as much of these things as you need to do them or something, but but you just try to follow your work. Materials have physiological effects on your body, as well as sort of social histories or attributes that we give them, or things that we subscribe to them, and then also they're doing who knows what on us, because the plant world or the mineral world are as active as we are, so who knows what's going on. But for me, I think it's more like you're going. I always think I want to be a dabbler. The other day I thought somebody said dabbler, and I thought I want that on my grave, dabbler, like sister, wife, friend, dabbler. Like to be like somebody who sort of dabbles in things, like that. You have some experience. Like I like having experiences with processes, and I would say most of my work comes from printmaking, or some weird, convoluted reiteration of taking something that is from a printed image and then making it into a three-dimensional image and then turning that back into a photograph, or just like this thing of sort of churning and turning things over again. And so it's more just about a desire to experience and discover things that aren't hidden. It's not like you're discovering, it's discovering what's in plain sight, but that you don't know about till you engage with it in your own body. And I think that for many artists that's a very predominant writing force, is to wanting to have the experience of something. Yeah, objects have histories, but forms have histories more than objects can or not, depending. And it is like that sense of reliquary, or things that are moving and passing around. But forms have histories, and it's each one is so rich and deep, and intersects our lives in so many complex ways, that to just learn one little shard of what that's like or what that's about is really fantastic, to have the opportunity to do things, to work in different methods of working, or different processes, or different kinds of workshops, or with different artisans or different people, technical people and stuff. Like that's a great joy as an artist, to have the opportunity to work with other people. I'm just trying to learn about things, and as an artist, I'm predominantly just interested in my own experience of making. What it ends up, sometimes you're attached to it or not attached to it or whatever, but in a certain way it's a byproduct of your energy. And there's something very satisfying and a very elemental way of being able to manifest something physically. That has a good feeling to it.